In the past 12 months, a lot happened in the open data landscape in Austria and elsewhere. The cities of Vienna and Lutz started open data portals. The Austrian government will follow soon. The European Commission also announced far-reaching initiatives in several European countries, and since open data is already a reality. Open data is growing up, and now is the time to look beyond the low-hanging fruits and to face the next challenges. Among them is the lifting of the economic potential of open data. Which kind of data and which format and structure of data delivery are necessary to make serious business? How can several data islands be linked to each other to reach relevant market sizes? These are some of the questions we will discuss this morning. The first question goes to Tom Zijlstra. Tom, as you already have heard, is consultant and knowledge work learning in social media, and is from the ePSI Platform of the European Union. Tom, EU Commissioner will boost the amount of the economic potential of open data in Europe to 40 billion euro a year. What has to be done to lift this potential? What have to be the next steps in the European Union to turn government data into gold?
Well, there's probably not an easy answer to that, but I think two ingredients are important. One is that if you look at the data availability right now, it's still very much fragmented. That means that if you want to do interesting things with data, you probably will need to combine different data sets, but part of that data might not be there yet. So we're still resigned to building applications, for instance, with only one data set as a basis. And we need less fragmentation of data. And one is sort of the new type of data roaming that we need. That if I have access to a certain data set in the Netherlands, I also need access to the same type of data in Austria and in Finland and Bulgaria to make applications that actually work on a wider level. Because if I create a public transport app, but that app is then useless when I travel to another city, I will not find a good customer base for it. So less fragmentation and new types of data roaming.
Okay. The city of Vienna started an open data portal last May. Brigitte Lutz works in the office of the Viennese Chief Information Officer, who is responsible for the Viennese open data catalog. How has the business aspect addressed in the setup? How was the business aspect addressed in the setup of the open data portal? Which business models could you think of with the data provided by the Viennese administration?
Well, let me answer not only for Vienna, I want to answer for Austria, because as I heard before, we have a big cooperation in Austria with the federal ePSI, with the other cities in Austria who will open the data. So before we started with our portal, we worked together for open formats to make a meter scheme together, so that this data will be able, with all the data we open, we want to improve the business places in Austria with our recommendations and with our data. We also wanted that our data portal should constantly grow on. We didn't want only to start with a lot of data and then it will stop. We made a survey and asked which data do you need, and so we looked to open that data, that business and that citizens will need. And I think especially the open format, the open license, not to forget, open license for e-commerce, the license we used, and we committed that data also will be free without any cost.
Okay. Sybille Straubinger is a member of the State Parliament in Vienna. Her focus is on technology politics, and she's a member of the political committee responsible for the city's open data policy. Sybille Straubinger, in this transformation process where companies transform and new offers around open data are made, where do you see possibilities to foster economic potential in Vienna? How would you estimate the economic potential for open data?
Quite difficult to say because we now Vienna, and I think there is none which really made money. And we ordered a study at the end of the year. We ordered a study at the end of the year to find out the economic potential of different niche markets in the ECT. And the final conclusion was that it's very difficult to predict, but it's always difficult to predict the economic potential of innovation. I can't really say that. And it may go in two opposite directions. The one is that new products and services will arise and processes will be more effective through open government data. And the other may be that there are business models based on government data, and these business models may have problems or must rearrange their business model, at least like you, for example. And so I think the main point is that the market in Vienna and Austria is too small. So it's a question of standards and of comparing data in German-speaking area at least, but also in Europe. And maybe there will also be some potential for other firms or public institutions like in the field of tourism, for example, or hotellery for applications in main needs, but it also needs for large hotels, it needs also standards which can get used all over Europe, at least, not only in Vienna.
A company who is among the leading data brokers for media professionals is Straubinger. Dirschl is content architect and head of content strategy at Straubinger Germany. Before Dirschl, how do you organize the transformation from existing established business models to the new paradigm of open data?
Okay, there are a lot of facets to that question, of course. The new business models aren't there yet, so it's about so the transformation process also isn't there yet. So what we have actually is more about the transformation process concerning the technology that is the basis for making any future business models possible. So that is what we are currently working on. That means so we we add the current to the current technical infrastructure that we have. We add let's say a semantic database to that, and that transformation process is currently taking place. If we have that done, which will be done during this year, I suppose, that's at least the plan, then we make experiments with open data mashups and also make experiments with business models around that. So this code can't go from publishing data completely free and see what's happening to including existing open data in existing products and put there the added value. So, and then we will see what is happening. So there is no real answer for the transformation process because we are currently in a tryout status, and I think that's all of us.
A company who wants to get in the business with open data is Microsoft. Berndl is lead of commercial software initiative at Microsoft Austria. Mr. Berndl, what is Microsoft doing with open data? Where do you see Microsoft in the open government data value chain?
I think we can play a pivotal role in many aspects we heard today. One is providing the data on a 24/7 basis, because that's essential for building business upon the data. And we have a lot of relationship also with standards, open source, which probably is not so well known, but Microsoft plays a big role in that area as well. And I think that's also very important for the open data, open government data area. So we participate in over 100 standard bodies. So we're really keen on working with the standard bodies that we provide our insights and play together nicely with all the other vendors, which is important when you speak about the concept we've seen today. And also engaging with the open source area, because we have implemented some projects already, mainly in Canada, where governments implemented portals with the use of open source and Microsoft technology together. And that's especially the area, this intersection of two worlds, commercial and open source, where I play a role in Austria, and where I'm really interested into helping businesses or helping create a business model, because Microsoft also nurtures a big partner ecosystem, which classically develops applications today in a classical form. And when we look to the open data possibilities, there's a lot of business models around apps we heard also today, and who's going to develop this app? So we need people out there, and we need a platform behind it that's open to all the devices. We heard of iPhones and Android phones. There's also a Windows phone. We've seen one in the slide deck, and Blackberries and what's out there. And if you start limiting one of these platforms, I think you will do a bad step. And what we have achieved with our cloud platform is that we provide support for all these platforms. So we are open to help become open data, as I said, in providing our technology.
We now want to take a look at a bigger scale of open data. Fensel has founded the Semantic Technology Institute, or STI, in Innsbruck in 2002. The STI is a research institute engaged in research and development to bring information and communication technologies of the future into today's world. Mr. Fensel, how does an economic environment of using open government data within the bigger open data cloud could look like?
Was this the question you did on the break?
Well, first of all, I think for public administration, I mean, most of the data are already there, and they are paid by taxes already, so by us. So putting a little small effort on top of it to put them in something useful can be probably easily justified, and not necessarily in a way that now public government also invent a new tax like the data tax or so. Because if we are able to stimulate some economic activity, successful economic activities based on this free data, this means 50% returns anyway in various forms of taxes. So reimbursement for the public side, I think, is easy. It's a very small investment. The data are there. The data can be used to make the world a better place, and some of this advantage returns as taxes, social welfare payments to the public side. Now, how to make economic success out of data? There's a kind of contradiction, because either you lock them and close them, and then you ask subscription fee or payments to access the data, or you make them free, and then it's hard to directly earn money with the data. However, it's possible and essential and necessary in the long run to make money with services based and enabled by this data. I mean, one example is the Süddeutsche recently had an article on their approach to Süddeutsche, the German newspaper, to what they call data journalism, where they basically build a small app or website that shows you the status of all the trains in Germany and their delay, and some summarize, so it's a kind of journalism, really getting a lot of data from the Deutsche Bundesbahn and present some meaningful pictures for end user. And the truth is also the Deutsche Bundesbahn tried a while ago to work with this data and make some nice application on top of user interfaces. Now, maybe they didn't really want to show the trains are delayed, but on the other hand, the app also showed that 99.5% of the trains are not delayed, so it's a kind of also positive transparency. But somehow the applications or services on top of the data the Deutsche Bundesbahn built, they never really got broad audience. And this is also, in a sense, not a surprise, because the speciality of the Deutsche Bundesbahn is not to produce meaningful data sets and a nice way to access them, but they are expert in transporting people forward and backward. So I think wise for a company like Deutsche Bundesbank put some effort in integrating the data and provide them and allow other people that have some expertise, for example journalistic expertise, to define useful services where then people are maybe willing to pay for, or they are financed through the advertisement that people consume as part of it for free, till to the point where such services can also be used to enrich the quality of other services. Not just imagine you want to buy or rent a flat somewhere in a neighborhood, and probably you want to know what is the crime statistic in this area, what is the statistic of schools, so how good are the results of the schools in average, and only an agent that can you provide such information will be valuable for you, that you use his expertise to find an apartment, or you will in the end only choose neighborhoods where you get some reliable information about these features. So in this sense, it's probably not that, especially not the public data should be a direct source of income, but rather a resource allowing other people to provide better services, and in the end enriching existing services or staying in business at all.
Andreas Blumauer already presented some of the results of the survey that Lutz put together with the semantic web company and the Open Knowledge Foundation Austria. Andreas, could you elaborate a bit on the interim results, because the survey, we can still take part at the survey till March 30. Could you elaborate on the interim results?
Okay, so one interesting intermediary result, for instance, is the fact that, as you've said already, it's important as a small country to be interoperable with other countries around us, obviously all over the European Union. So one demand actually, or what users said by, can't remember exactly, but I think it was like 80%, is the fact that from the very beginning of the new Austrian data portal, we should use standards interoperable with our neighbors, with countries in the European Union. I know it starts with units, it doesn't start with the formats themselves, so it was a very general question, but still I was a bit amazed that actually the demand for the very beginning already is very high on this issue. And I think it would be a wise step to not start with something else, because then maybe all of the energy is already out of such projects. So that's a bit my fear, if you don't go this way from the very beginning. Also with something else, one question was, and that's what I showed already, how semantic web standards should be used. And it was really amazing seeing that more than 75% of the participants said, yeah, that's very important from the very beginning. It shouldn't be an add-on later. It should be in place already at the beginning. So that was the second thing. And the third one, also quite general, was the question about metadata. How metadata should be used also to describe the data itself. So for instance, to provide meaningful search facilities over the data portal. And that's also something very important, obviously, for the people from the very beginning. So of course, I mean, if we write a letter to our Christkind, then we always want everything. And it's clear we have always limited resources. But I was a bit surprised about this, as I said before, that from the very beginning, those features should be in place already.
Okay. One insight that I remember was that, which was not a surprise, but the biggest economic potential for open data business is seen in the development of applications. And next question goes to Sybille Straubinger. Vienna has a rural startup scene. How do you plan to bring startups and open data together? How do you plan to foster apps development based on open data?
I think the most important thing we can do is to provide new data material and continuously, and do this in standard which is appropriate, and do this with data which is useful for applications. But of course, funding is also a theme of the topic for us, and there is, since last year we had, in the context of the content award of the TIT, Open Government Data Award, and we will also have this year. And I think it would be necessary to adapt also calls in our funding agencies on this topic, maybe also programs which help to develop new business models. And another topic is that maybe the city can help to bring together business and the community, people who develop it. So maybe in the context of one of the open data platforms or something like that. And I think very important things also we have in Vienna, we have a new, quite a new project that's called Vienna Wins or Win-Wins. And this tries to link together the innovative firms and with new products to link with the administration, just to show them what's possible and what could be useful for the government, for the administration, for the city. And this could also be a possibility to link administration with open government data ideas, just to show them what could be useful on apps, what could be new services for the administration. Maybe the administration could be one buyer and one was buyer, because that's the idea behind the win-win, that it's important to fund, but it's more important to buy things and products which are existing.
Okay. Another potential in this survey was linked that business with data integration. Christian Dirschl, how is the status of the data integration market? What developments do you see, and how would you describe the potential of it?
The potential of data integration is, I think, is extremely high. As Andreas showed, I think this is one of the key things for enterprises, and I think it's also one of the key things for publishers or interim brokers that we are, to make that a reality on the side of the customer, to include his data with our data and the open data, and maybe also with web data or third-party data. I think this is a challenge. I think this was not possible 5, 6, 7 years ago, definitely not 10 years ago, because the complexity is very, very high. I think now it's possible. I think that the technology for doing that is there. Our internal experience that we have at Wolters Kluwer, on the one hand in Germany and on the other hand in the US, is proof for me that it's possible. And therefore, my next step for data integration is really to leverage that knowledge, that technology into the customer's processes, his professional processes, and then we have a completely new environment in place where we really have federated environment, professional environment there, and I'm very positive about that. And if you ask me how long will that take, of course I don't have an answer to that, but we have already one product there which can do a lot of the things that are promised, and here we will see in the coming months what the market is saying to that.
Tom, in several European countries like Great Britain, the Netherlands, Sweden, open data are already a reality. What business models with open data are successful? How do examples for best practices look like?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that always looking from one country in Europe that other countries are ahead. Where in reality I think there's half a dozen countries that are sort of in the forefront, but they're still mediocre because we're still figuring out how to do this, and all the others are lagging behind. And Austria actually joined that group of leading countries in the last year or so, mainly because of a strong development of the community here in Austria, where both government representatives and business and activists and the open data hackers have found each other in constructive conversations and dialogue. So, but it always looks better someplace else. But in reality, it's pretty mediocre everywhere. But of course, there are examples from all over Europe where people are trying to find ways of making good use of data. And if you look at the models of what seems to be working, one of them is, of course, free. Biggest reuse case in the Netherlands is, as we are on the coast and we cycle a lot, is the rain radar. It's most heavy reuse that we see. But that's a free service with advertising around it. It's recently been bought by RTL Television as a vehicle for advertising. So free is a model. Selling back to government is also very popular. Finding a way of enriching data and then selling it back into public sector bodies. It's also the most popular model within public sector bodies to sell their data to other public sector bodies. And part of that is in collaborative government services, so where services and products are created to actually make the interaction between citizen and the government easier. Things like we have an application called Verbeterde Buurt in the Netherlands, which is a fix my street type of thing, where citizens can report issues in the public domain, and it's connected to the back office systems of local governments, and they can then sort of pull it into their normal dossiers, flows and workflows, and they report back to the same application that it's been fixed or they're not going to do anything about it. But those are sort of services on the edge of what government already does in terms of services, but it's getting an additional layer that is very useful for citizens and users, but it would not be something where government itself would be building a service, but they're willing to buy it. And a lot of things are in the area where Christian is aiming, which is where data is not being used as a way of enhancing or creating business, but as a way of enhancing existing business. So it's for internal activity. Transport companies that are using open data that wasn't available to them before. But those are hidden. And I think that's also the future for successful open data stories, is that the data will disappear under the hood and we won't see that it's actually based on public data.
Future technologies and business models depend on research. Fensel, what are the examples of applications and business ideas for tomorrow coming out of this next generation of researchers and developers of institutes like yours in Innsbruck?
Yes, I hope so. I mean, some of these business ideas, I think you very nicely sketched them already. Now, what is research in this area? I mean, research basically should help you in providing this data. So this is a lot of research in others. For example, this Lutz 2 project here, which organizes or co-organizes this event, which is basically not providing method and tools. And by the way, there are other projects like Planet Data, in which I am. But there's a stream of projects which basically provide methods and tools, allowing others to work with this open data, produce this open data, consume this open data. And then there is this whole stream of building services and applications on top of the data, so providing real added value, because data as such have a potential to provide value, but the value as such. And I mean, examples for us is naturally in Innsbruck. We have in Tyrol, we have two industrial sectors. One is tourism, and the second one is selling glass bells for the price of diamonds. So let's focus on the first one. For example, a region like Tyrol has a problem that a lot of the money spent on tourism immediately does not go to to Tyrol, but just somewhere else, basically, goes there where you have the booking service. No? I mean, just when you book a hotel room with standard booking engines in the web, you around 20% of the fee not goes to the hotelier, but rather to the booking engine in the web. So making sure that a significant share of the economic turnover around tourism is really spent in the region and kept in the region requires a lot of support, clever support in web, internet-based technologies, availability of data, transactions on top of this data, so this really becomes a main success factor for a region. I mean, you could still have the beautiful mountains, you could still have the beautiful lakes, and you could still have all the beauty of Tyrol, and it's not just 10 years, but still you would find out that most of the revenue generated around these touristic areas would go somewhere else if you don't have the competence, the services, and the research in this area.
Okay, Andreas, the semantic web company operates successfully in an open data environment. What are the tips and pieces which are important for the development of open data business?
Okay, I try not to be again on the technical level. I think first of all it's about different mindset. Change the mindset. The people behind open data projects, as we've heard already today, are trying to innovate something. They try out, they play around a little bit with the possibility the web offers us today. So if you look on the evolution of the web, we started with putting documents on the web, and then we found out that actually a hyperlink system, which is a commodity right now, and now we are in the stage of exploring the web as a space for publishing data, and the next step is hyperdata. So that's quite obvious to me, like documents, hyperlinks is the same with data and hyperdata, or you can also call it linked data. So that's obvious to me. So first step is just to play around like we did when GoPro was out there, and oh wow, there's something new, and now let's try it out, what happens. And I mean, our customers, they are most often the ones who have already had this trial phase. So for instance, one is the Education Services Australia. They were publishing data since 6-7 years already. So they are already in the phase of linking their data now. They try to figure out what happens. So actually they're now in the phase of trying out the next step, or the fourth step already, I would say. So actually I think the most important thing is to be a bit an innovator, play around, try it out, allow to fail in the first phase maybe, and learn from the best. That's the point, I think. So it's not the worst case to look at Finland or to look at Sweden and see what they're doing. And of course we've learned a lot from the British government, what they did, and they showed us already. So they're already in the phase 4 actually. So parts of those data is open data, but more and more data becomes linked open data already. And now we have, of course, to discuss what's the benefit of that. That's clear. But so I think my biggest credo is let people or companies and organizations play in the first phase, and we try to support them not to make, let's say, the biggest failures, but point to other projects, to other experiences, and learn from them. I mean, that's kind of innovation, I think, usually happens anyway.
Okay. As you already said, Microsoft is not necessarily a company which can change for being open. What do you want to learn from the open data community, and what would the open data community learn from Microsoft as far as business is concerned?
Probably we're not famous for openness, or not known for that. Probably it's still what is an office, but that's probably why it's part of my job to tell the openness story of Microsoft, why we have a lot of relationship established towards open source. And we also established an open source platform, and I looked up some numbers, and they were really impressive. We have more than 11,000 open source projects on that platform going on, and there are more than 80,000 apps from the open source that run on Windows. So I think we have a strong relationship with open source, even though it's not seen in the public and the famous other things. Nevertheless, I think we can learn a lot from open source communities, because I've spent some years with Microsoft, so it's more than 13 years now, and what I've seen is that we are not really good in establishing communities. And what's the reason for that? I think as a company, you like control. And if you really want to establish communities, you have to have a different go-to to control and how to handle control. And I think that's what we can learn from these communities. On the other hand side, what can the open source community learn from Microsoft? When I look at the open data scenario, and I strongly believe that at some point of time we will cross the question, we need some form of licensing for this data. And I think we have a lot of experience with licensing, and we can give back some experience with licensing. We need different models in licensing, and it has nothing to do with cost, but in usage and also the rights, how we can use the data. And I think there has to be a lot done in the future around that, and it's probably an area where we can provide back something to the community.
Brigitte, from the discussion so far, before we open up the discussion to the audience, what are your conclusions concerning the Viennese open data portal as far as business is concerned? What will you take with you?
What will I take with me from today? I think the network is interesting, and I'll invite everybody who is here for the next open data platform Vienna on the 29th of March. You can speak with the experts of the city of Vienna, who will come, can give me his contact addresses, and we will invite you per email. We will make a film, and if you're not in Vienna on this time, you can get afterwards. It is interesting to speak about business models, and we invite again to think over how you can use the data of the city of Vienna for your special apps. Maybe combine some services. For example, Vienna is a cultural city. If you go to the theater, you can combine a theater program with the city map, with the timeline of the buses and the underground, and maybe such an app will come with our next competition, and with the next award will be again this year. I think we will stay in contact, and we should stay in contact, the government and the companies and the communities. Will be a good way to build on with open data in Austria.
Okay. We will now open the discussion to the audience. According to our attendance list, there are a lot of app developers in the audience. So are there any questions to the panel? Please to ask.
Are there already any public plans for a federal data portal in Austria?
Yes,
Is there a schedule?
yes.
Wait, maybe I missed something before.
Somebody told it before, the beta version of the federal portal will be launched in April. I think June or July, version 1 June.
I'm not a developer. I'm also from the Semantic Web Company, but I want to give a comment on this business model issue that is popping up all the time. And actually, I'm an economist myself, and I have to say that when we are talking about new business models, we are talking about the wrong thing, because I think open data is not about new business models, but it's about new ways of value creation. And when we, so to say, because the business models won't change. The business models are subscription, advertising, licensing revenues. This is always the same. But when we talk about a specific business model or a viable business model for open data on a federated basis, then I think where we have to investigate in is into micropayment systems, is into how to explore niche markets, and also how to explore cross-licensing, so that several players in a, so to say, that compile a product out of various data sources can sell a homogeneous product but get, so to say, the share for the data they've contributed. And this will be micropayment systems, this will be very small amounts of money that will be generated for probably the single product that is compiled, but in total, this can then have in the end a significant so to say share of a revenue of a company. Okay, this is what I wanted to say.
Have a question?
No, it was a comment. It was a comment on the business model issue.
I have a question. The European Commission compares open data with gold, and I think about what will be the market structure. Is that there will be a lot of people, 100,000 of people, just are beginning digging of this gold, or will be there only a few companies with huge investment, license, just to dig this gold? So my question is, what will be the market structure of the businesses? Will we see companies, local companies that use local data, or will we see international companies like Microsoft using this open data, or will we see companies in a few countries that they use harmonized open data? So what do you think will be the market structure?
Well, you're looking at me, so I don't really know. One thing is that I don't really like sort of the comparison of open data to gold or to oil. The aspect of seeing it as a resource is interesting because that's the good part of it. But if you liken it to gold or oil, you're also saying only one person can have it at a time, which is not the case. And if you look at market structures, I think that the fact that data is anybody can use it without it diminishing is that also points to the type of markets you will see, which is people locally. When I go to my town, I may use a little bit of data I use for some neighborhood app that my coding neighbor hacked together over the weekend. And at the same time, I might be buying something from the Microsoft product range that uses the same data for an entirely different purpose. So you will have a layered structure of various ways. Not everything about data is about business. A lot of it is also about citizen participation, it's about transparency, and it's about self-empowerment with that data, like the example of the elderly woman from Denmark going into town again because she now knows where the toilets are. So it's multi-layered. There will not be a market for data. There will be various layers to it, I would say.
Anybody else from the panel who wants to comment on this question?
So data could also be the initiator for new kind of professions, call it like that. Don't call it business model, call it profession. Because one part is to get the data, but I also like the analogies to natural resources because you have to process it through the way, and then at the end it's a product, and it doesn't stop as the product. You can take the product, if you take gold, then you can make a watch out of it or rings, whatever. You need different professions for that behind it. And I think that's where we're heading to in the data ecosystem. There will be a creation of new jobs, new professions around that we don't have today.
My idea would be to have these both approaches. I've showed that Open Data 1 and Open Data 2, just there's two layers, like the web exists also without semantic web. I mean, there is a lot of Web 2.0, Web 1.0, whatever, and it's the same with data. You have a lot of app makers, and there's probably no intermediary in between, so the data integration is done on the application layer, obviously. And then you have more, let's say, larger companies who would like to have that integrated already by professionalists beforehand, like Wolters Kluwer, for instance. And those both probably can cooperate very fruitfully. For instance, app makers will inspire a lot the larger enterprises, for instance. So it's again kind of a garage where you can try out a lot. And so those two ways to make useful applications on top of open data will coexist, to my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a professor at a university, but I want to be taken serious by my colleagues, so I don't want to talk too much about business. But maybe a last statement. The global international market of data integration is a $1 trillion market. Yeah? Now I forgot was it Singapore dollar or US dollar, but $1 trillion is a lot, which means that if you can take a small share of this and provide solutions there, with enterprise integration, others has obviously a tremendous impact on a tremendous economic impact. To have a precise business model, I think we heard quite some good proposals, and also the remark that the general business model will stay the same, but the sensation maybe were. But this is something that will also evolve, and important is really not hamper too much the progress by trying to immediately gain income from the data. I mean, let the data free, give them the chance to breathe, and let other people generate services and income on top of them.
So if we take these calculations which show us that there's a real big benefit if we open up data, it goes into trillions.
That was on billions, he was on trillions.
So on the other hand, we have some concerns, especially in public bodies or government bodies. I've already experienced this. They are anxious about this movement because they also sell data. For example, GeoImage AT is selling aerial imagery to Google, for example. And if they have to open up suddenly their data because there comes a new law or something, they need to compensate this. Is there already a concept to address this and new models also for government bodies? Maybe
save money. No, till now it's not so that we have to open every data immediately. That's the discussion about the here. But of course it's a question of money, it's a question of economic behavior of cities and government, and also it's a question of time. And we do this in Vienna in cooperation and coordination with the administrational units, because it's their database which they have to give to the public, and experience is that it is a good way to do it in cooperation. We have to talk and to create awareness among the administration as well. But it's a good thing to do this in a cooperation and not one time, so something you have to do all, but to do it in steps, because there's also, as far as I know, different data materials, which is not so easy to how do you say, to transform in the standards, and very different units, some which all have a different collection of data. And we have this in Austria, I think, in the 9 countries as well, different collection of data, also with a different base. So when you have education data, there are, I'm sure that Syria there is different figures in than there are in Vienna. So we have to get on the same level within the city and within the country as well.
Maybe to add to that, if I look at the Netherlands, most of the public sector bodies that sell data for revenue do so because they were told to start doing that in the 1980s. That was a way of budget cutting. Go make your own money by selling your assets, and that was data. So the solution for those public sector bodies, they cannot generate that themselves. It must come from someplace else. And they basically make money out of data for two ways. One, when you register. I, as a company, for instance, need to register with the Chamber of Commerce, and I pay for that registration every year, and they don't do anything for it. But besides that, except of course selling your data to spammers. But and then once you want that data out of their register, you have to pay again. So I have to pay to check my own information in the system, basically. So those are the two revenue models around data. The public sector bodies that have those revenue models, they will not be able to solve it. It has to come from a different level. So what you see happening in the Netherlands is that, for instance, since about a year, the Ministry for Economic Affairs is stepping in, saying, well, by selling that data, we are hindering innovation in the Netherlands, we are hindering ourselves when it comes to economic growth, so we have to find different ways of financing those registries that charge for the data. And then they started looking into who is paying for the data. Usually, 95% of the revenues actually come from other public sector bodies. And they recently released two major data sets. One was already a while back. That was the meteor data. It turned out they had 5 external customers for their data. That's not a whole lot. In January, they stopped charging 50,000 euros for the Dutch key topography data set, which is a high-resolution topography data set from them. Just to have a look at the data, you pay 50,000 euros. And they stopped charging for it, because also there were 5 external customers for the data. All the other customers were other public sector bodies. So the only money they had to reallocate was the number of external customers times that 50,000 euros. They did that January 1st, and they saw a 300% increase in the actual data request from outside, because all the other requests were from inside. The motivation for the Ministry for Economic Affairs was clear, and they looked at, well, there's only several small money streams that we have to reallocate, and then we can lift those revenue models. And they are also doing something about the registration costs of data.
We also have such examples. We have data sets which are sold one time a year, and they will be opened because the income is 200 euros, and the administration for selling.
Yeah, that's one of the most overlooked things, that actually asking money for data brings you a lot of transaction costs, because you have to police it, you have to do all the administration, and it drives you up your costs quite a lot. And if you only have 5 external customers, it's not worth the effort.
The way will be very fast. And another model could be to open free a lower level of data. If you want more, like the video reference data is another better quality, and you have to buy for it yourself.
Oh, that's awesome. But geo image already gives you get a lower quality for free, which is interesting for the OpenStreetMap community, for example. They can use it now.
One very different example, but sort of an example of also how the Ministry of Economic and Netherlands is operating now. In 2015, there's supposed to be a European-wide data store of high-resolution satellite images. And the Dutch Ministry of Economic Affairs said, well, we're not going to wait for it, we're going to buy those images now and release them to the public. So they negotiated a license with the companies that provide those images, that any Dutch corporation and any Dutch citizen can freely reuse anything of it. And they released that data yesterday. And they spend, I think, 4 million a year to make that possible.
I've got a question.
There's a special kind of data which is particularly interesting for app developers, which is live data. For example, traffic lights, when they green or red, or also when subways are delayed and so on. So how far are we with making this kind of data public rather than having static bench of schools or other stuff?
I know that there's a discussion about it, but I don't know how far it is.
I think there's real-time data for me.
Okay, I have a question. It's sort of related to this. It's about transparency of data. Do you think that government bodies fear the transparency? That someone from, I don't know, building a simple app that built up on this free available data could find out something that is not so good for the government? For example, if application is based on some financial data, maybe they can find out some correlations between some companies and people in the government. Do you think this would be a problem? This happened actually. The question was, do you think that government bodies fear the transparency? I don't know, whoever has the answer.
It's certainly something that you hear from certain public sector bodies, especially when it comes to financial data and stuff. But it's also the reason why other governments are actually promoting it. So countries like Moldova and Macedonia, they are opening up data because they want to use it to battle corruption. And that means that not every public sector body there is rejoicing about transparency, but at least the Prime Minister's office and the Ministry of Finance office is. So it depends on who you ask inside the government. There is fear among public sector bodies about data being misused after release, especially when you ask experts on anything. The Statistics Office 2 years ago said we're never going to do open data because we are the only ones who understand statistics in this country. And they're probably right, but for everything I want to do with that data, I don't need to know a lot of statistics because I have a very different use case. So there's a lot of reserves and fears of what other people will do with data. But it depends on who you ask inside government. So it's a trick of finding the right person inside government to do it.
Because in Slovenia, one guy developed an application that was built on financial data, and everyone was able to see how much funding they got from government, and suddenly everyone was speaking about it. It was even an article in some American newspaper, I don't know. It was quite a scandal almost. Just wondering. And
well, in Slovenia, you at least have an information commissioner, Natasha Pijic, and those corruption agency, I think, who are very approachable due to those type of things.
They're trying, but somehow they always get to some barriers. They're stopped.
Yeah, that's a change.
I hope these things will change.
Yes. So my question to the panelists is about an issue that was already mentioned by Tom, government buying the data. So it's often said that governments are not able to produce apps in a cost-efficient way, but in some cases even governments can't produce data in a cost-efficient way, I would say, in cases such as the geospatial data, for instance. So the governments have to buy those data from companies in public contracts or other contracts, and they usually get an exclusive license because the companies, unlike the governments, see the potential for reuse or reselling of that data, so they want to give the government only an exclusive license so that they can resell the same data to other companies or potentially other institutions or other governments. So one way to solve this is to buy the data under a non-exclusive license and then release it, but the government will have to pay a lot more. The other way is to improve the capabilities in government to collect the data inside the government instead of relying on commercial suppliers for the data. So what do you think is some ideas for this when the data is not collected by the government but some commercial suppliers, and how to open that data? Maybe someone from the public sector?
Our experience, the city of Vienna is a big city. We have our ICT environment and what we do it by ourselves. But I know when we speak with smaller cities or towns, they are not able to collect them themselves. There is one man or woman in the administration who does everything. They don't have to know how to do ICT things to collect the data. They need companies that it then.
Well, the other option is to have other institutions like a centralized statewide institutions, governmental organizations that will do the collection for the smaller cities that are not able to do that for themselves.
Historic week. It started in another week.
Okay, another opinion.
I think it should have a central organization to do. It seems to me a bit too centralized. So because we have different institutions, different sources of data from health and environment and traffic and so on. It seems to me more appropriate to do this on institutions who can handle this data and who generate this data from their work. Yes, but maybe that's the point of view from a bigger city.
Okay, but do you buy some data from commercial suppliers?
Not as far as I know, but what you meant was that the city maybe or government buy data back which is which is combined with other data and so some sort of service for the government, act on service with an added value, but not. As far as I know, we don't buy data from private sector.
I think it's interesting because there was a lot of discussion with the OpenStreetMaps community where the World Bank was teaming up with Google to produce data with them together, but the Google license wouldn't allow the data to be really open, but really tied to the Google ecosystem. So I think it's really important that big governments decide to whatever data they deal with, and where they can make decisions, that they make decisions to really free up the data. And another question from my point of view, when we talk about open data, this often motivates the open source communities to deal with such open data. And if you have some very interesting software that you would like to promote, because I guess in the open source ecosystem we have a lot of different softwares that help us dealing with open data. But in the talks today, I missed like references to interesting open source projects that help us leverage this open data.
Yeah, maybe I can answer. If you look at the LD2 project, for instance, there is a technology stack published, publicly available already now, and it consists of more than 10 tools or even more, I don't know exactly. And you can download it and use it as a data package if you like. So if you are rather in the development area, it's a pretty good starting point for dealing with open data, linking open data, publishing open data, and so on and so forth. So that's one possibility if you are interested in open source software. Maybe there's others.
We have a framework if you want to deal with open government data. We have an open government data interface framework you can use, and there are some implementations already in real-time projects. You can currently develop Drupal or CCAN and do solutions based on that, and the framework is available in an open source model.
That's another good point. The US government data portal was just recently, the software underneath published as open source software. And as far as I know, the EU data portal will be published soon.
CCAN Drupal.
CCAN plus Drupal,
Yeah.
like the UK and many other national portals.
And are the 10 courses here? Can you tell a little bit about the EU portal, maybe about CCAN Drupal?
So the portal only consists of essentially three main components of the way to say. There is Drupal, which will be the surrounding interactivity with the user to support say questions handling and so on, that sort of thing. The package handling, so the data management and saying what your EU government bodies will upload and so on, that management and the metadata around those data packages, that's CCAN. and it will be multilingual. So because in Europe there are many different cultures and languages, so this will be multilingual, even a certain amount of the metadata. And then there is a visualization component in it. So the goal is to make those data sets attractive to the public, saying what's inside, so that you can have kind of a preview on what it is. So you will not get the full picture, but you get kind of a preview on it. And the choice that we have made there, or the proposal is to have all the data will be then in RDF, transformed to RDF. It's not necessarily to be provided natively as RDF, but have transformed to RDF. And the visualization we'll use based on RDF. And that's there are tools.
Is that the Drupal component, the Spark Reviews component, which you're going to use?
No, that's what the data cube visualization that
actually we plan not only one visualization but several, and will be pluggable. You can plug in different new visualizations, and for the type of data. So for statistical data, there will be a specific cube visualization of statistical data. For spatial data, a map view where we also use OpenStreetMap as the underlying map, and then you can visualize different points of interest or whatever is in the data set. And then there will be generic viewer or tool, maybe a preview also for tabular data, and then a generic browser based on OntoWiki for data sets. But the aim is also that everybody can contribute visualizations and mashups basically of the data and register that on the platform. Maybe it won't be available for the start in June yet, but we will continue to develop that for 2 years and enrich that with additional functionality.
And how will the semantic interoperability be provided? Do you provide control vocabularies or searches?
So there's a big involvement because it's now under the lead of the Publications Office. So it's Publications Office, and they have already done a lot of work in organizing like things like Euroblock and so on, and other canals and control vocabularies, and those will be the basis of the data. So that will be the basis. And there's another initiative within the European Commission, the ADMS, if I remember really. So now it's to see how those two can be merged together and bring this to this data portal. So which one you're going to take? So there are two similar approaches and you have to merge together. So that will happen. I don't know exactly what will be the outcome in June, so what will be the decisions taken, but it will be an ongoing process to enrich more and more the data sets. So it will be a pointer where you go through, you find it, and then you're pointed towards other publication places within the European Commission. And one thing I want to give to you, which is maybe surprising, at least for me it is surprising. So because of this work in the centralizing of data, we're coming in contact with many of the bodies in the European Commission. And what we realized is that most of those European bodies already think of publishing data. They have already thought, saying, yes, we want to bring it to our citizens. They have some have publication platforms, and to our surprise, most of them consider RDF, linked data, as their primary format. But they don't know about each other. So we are just now doing handshaking. You use RDF. Oh, but this one does it too, you know. And we bring them in contact.
How will you then deal with the inspired version, which is not RDF?
Yeah. Well, actually, those bodies like it because it brings together. So one of the things is statistical data they have, and they all using one of this data cube vocabulary in all the users. So it means that in a few months' time we can do cross-indicator comparisons, if you like.
Yeah, well, just to add that I'm glad that Drupal will be part of this site, because I'm from the Drupal Austria community, and on 3rd to 5th of May there's the Drupal Businessday in Vienna, so if the business perspective wants to get in touch with this technology, we're very happy to join us for something.
There was a question. Yeah, thank you. Please talk a lot about this data. I'm still confused through. Here's a question. Can you categorize the top 3 data areas that are provided by the government and contrast that with those areas of data that are being requested at the business? You see what I'm asking? We talk a lot of data is being provided, and the data is very generalized. So what kind of data? Is it from education? How many people are educated? Is it health data? Is it what kind of data is published right now? What are the main areas of data available? Give me the top 3 categories. And then I'd like to contrast that to what are businesses asking for. You know, is that what they're getting, or is it completely different?
Well, but that depends. I mean, that's the main point, really. So I'm in the legal business. I'm in the social insurance business. So that's the data I'm interested in, and none else. So I'm interested in legal information. I'm interested in political and financial information, and I'm interested in health information, social insurance information. That's what I'm interested in, because that's where my business comes from. And if you talk with somebody else, then he will give the same answer within his business.
Well, I would like to see that answer from a perspective per country or per EU, right? Because we're part of that. So, but I'd like to see that answer for Austria. What's the Austrian government ready to provide us data? What are the top 3 areas? Is it health statistics? What is available? I don't know. Do you guys know? I have no idea. Right? I haven't been to the portal either, right? So, and then I'd like to contrast that to, you know, what are businesses asking for? Government, please give me this data, because I have the business idea, I don't want to make it. And do they get it or not? This is my question.
At least our survey, and it will be publicly available, to get us the raw data, will unveil what businesses are looking for. So that I can promise.
And I'm sorry, I can't remember. Thomas, maybe you know. But I think,
of course, again, geographical data was very
transparency, points of interest.
Yeah.
Traffic. Yeah.
Like about 80% of PI applications in enterprises are based somehow on geographical data. So there's always kind of a reference point.
Yeah. This is where we started in.
Yeah.
But over the survey.
I heard already a little bit of an answer in the question. So I would agree with you if you said the overlap is not too big at the moment. Because the really interesting data is not out there.
The point is that there's a big dilemma with providing governmental data. It has to be anonymous. And there is a broad source that comes along versus the value of the data, for me, is if it's very thin. See? The point is, I'm not interested in maybe occasionally how much garbage do we produce as Austria, right? I'm much more interested actually how much garbage is my village producing, and or particularly my street, right? Because that's relevant to me. So there's the personal context. And the government has to give an anonymous view of large amounts of data. So it bears very little relevance to me. I can compare Austrian garbage production versus Germany or Switzerland. Okay, that's fine. But what's really relevant to me is how much does my street, because I'm taxed on that amount, right? So there is a relation, and this goes along. This is just one example where you see as more fine and grained and more personal the data is, the more important, the more relevant it is. And that's obviously difficult with a business model where you require a good analysis of huge amount of data to make it valuable for me, so that I'm ready to pay.
Historically, there's of course 4 areas where we know there's the willingness of government to share data and business being interested in data, because those are the 4 areas where there's been for over a century exchange of that data, which is geo, meteo, business registries, and legal information. So historically, those are the 4 big ones. If you look at sort of the smaller needs for interviews you get into the lists that are on the Vienna portal and the Berlin portal are based on asking citizens what would you be interested in. And that's all stuff that is about my living neighborhood, my direct living environment, because that's where I am and that's where my questions and my issues are. The biggest area, I think, where there's a lot of business interest and very little data provision by the government is in real-time data. The Ring Road of Amsterdam, there's lots of cameras that actually scan all the license plates. And that data is now being released, which is extremely interesting, not because you can look at the license plates because they filter that out, but you can use it for real-time traffic flow models of traffic into and out of Amsterdam. So you can use it for real-time multimodal transport planning, saying, okay, if I take that highway exit, I will be in the city center for Vienna. In real time, there's very little provided by the government right now because it's difficult probably to get it out of the systems. There's a huge interest in it.
Okay, one more question because I've heard that the food is prepared for 9 one more question.
I have one little question. It's more a technical one. We have silently talked about, let's say, what the format that we're using about data, with the opening up data, and we somehow silently assume that this is RDF, or we talked about linked data. Now, this is an enabler for all this process and linking up. And now it's more maybe to Microsoft and so on, in the sense of traditional, if you come say you're building up an application environment and so on, we have all of SQL experience and so on. Spark and RDF are now emerging as an independent standard, even quite independent vendors, variants available on this. So it's kind of very interchangeable for one vendor to another vendor at this moment. So this is, in a certain sense, very good. So it makes it really open and interchangeable. Is Microsoft foreseeing in terms of opening up, and themselves saying this is a way, a platform where we're going to work as well on it? Or you see other classical vendors saying, yes, we are going towards that as a data carrier as middle layer between our applications and data storage.
If you look, what will be our business model in the future is we establish a network of big data centers, and we provide the power to host the data in the future. That's one of our business aspects we see. And therefore we open up to any standard that's a standard already or de facto standard in the industry, like the decision we did on Hadoop. We had our own development for big data, but we announced that we are adding our development and our integration on Hadoop because it's an existing ecosystem out there. People use it, there are showcases for that, and we don't want to create another community competing with another community about the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's the change we are running through as Microsoft. We are way more open than 10 years ago because we changed our business model as well. And in the future we don't sell packaged software, we sell services, and we provide the horsepower and data center for that. And if it's necessary to support that standard, we will support it. And that's why we involved with 150 plus standard bodies to really have the full picture of what's out there and what's necessary to be this provider in the future. So yes, we look into every standard, upcoming standard. Same is true for HTML5. It's not the standard yet, but we do a lot of development around that and try to incorporate in all our new upcoming technologies because we foresee that will be a very important standard protocol in the future. So yeah, that's our position on new standards or upcoming standards. It's important for us.
I think you want to has done about open source software use. Open source software is used in Austria for the open government portal and so on, and it's sure if we develop some useful parts, programs, they will be given back and they will be used for everybody. The one thing, and the other thing is Are you from Vienna with your wish for the garbage?
More or less, yeah.
Yes. Also an invitation for everybody, if you have good ideas or you know data that you use, you know our portal, we have email, we have Twitter, we have everything. You can ask us, and we want to establish a process to ask our departments, do you have the data, is it possible to augment?
Yeah, I think that's the best bit, because if I talk to people who are complaining about data not being available, I always ask, did you care to ask the public sector body involved? And usually the answer is no, they didn't think of it. So asking for what you want is actually a very good starting point.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sure there will be opportunities to discuss further questions outside during the networking party. So thank you very much for taking part in the discussion, and thank you for attending.